Welcome back to Tap Tempo with me, Matt Lange. This week on the show, it's truly an honor to have Scott Kirkland of the Crystal Method on Tap Tempo. The Crystal Method are truly pioneers of electronic dance music in the 90s. They really made their first big splash with the album Vegas, which also spawned the singles Trip Like I Do and Busy Child. The Crystal Method has later gone on to score film and TV, and they have a new album coming out later this year called The Trip Out. I actually had the pleasure of collaborating with Scott and Justin Chancellor of the band Tool a few years ago on a song called Cabin Pressure, and most recently, the Crystal Method remixed my recent track with Denise Reno, Ordinary Love. Once again, it's truly a pleasure to have Scott on Tap Tempo, and I hope you enjoy. No, the first thing I want to talk to you about is the whole Spotify debacle going on right now, which I assume you've been paying attention to.
Yeah, I don't listen to Joe Rogan's show. I don't really listen to many podcasts or many of those shows. I mean, I've heard it. I watched a bit of his apology, and I find it to be, I understand his point of view that he's brought on other people and he's had like Sanjay Gupta and he's had these other prominent voices that go on there and they creates a dialogue that goes back and forth and Neil Young and the rest of them, they have the right to pull their music off, and they're not, I bet they weren't too happy with Spotify before that. This was maybe just
That's kind of how I view this. I've been critical of Spotify ever since they were the reason I couldn't get out of a publishing deal, but aside from that.
Oh, that's a whole different side story.
That's a different story. We probably talked about that at one point. But streaming, changed the whole model.
Oh, absolutely.
But the thing that I find really fascinating about this is essentially because there's blood in the water with Rogan, now people smell it and they're jumping on the anti-Spotify train, which because really finally now there's actually a reason to give preview to actually how poorly artists are treated on Spotify, and the irony of, they don't pay us, yet they'll take all the money they made off of our work and then give $100 million to Joe Rogan and then, $60 million to some 25-year-old girl who talks about sex on a podcast. And meanwhile, they built their entire system off our work. And that's what I find fascinating about it.
Yeah. And, and I Spotify is one of those things that just, it is, what it is. It's become obviously the main source for content for so many people. They get to feel slightly better about themselves by contributing into some fund that will never ever get to the artist that they're listening to. But I don't want to spend time shaming them to because that's the model that they've been presented, and it's pretty much the only thing out there.
It's not the listener's fault.
No,
at all. I don't blame a listener or a fan or anything.
Absolutely.
I blame the business model of Spotify.
Absolutely. And I did find that comment a few months back where, I can't remember if it was the CEO or somebody, the guy that was running Spotify, who said, It's not our responsibility to fix the model for artists or something. It was something, a paraphrasing. It's not our responsibility to be the record company or, it is kind of your responsibility to make sure that you work out some deals where the artists that people are listening to are getting paid for what they're for. I mean, these guys, once they get into their big penthouse, fucking suites and and they start yachting it up with these other billionaires, they forget about the whole reason why they started these companies to begin with. They're artist driven initially, and then they fucking,
I mean, I think this guy, I mean, it's Daniel Ek. And I mean, their whole claim is, of course, that, we are saving the music industry. And originally it was, we're monetizing piracy, or we're stopping people from piracy. And the irony is, this guy, his background before he created Spotify, he was like the CEO of Mega Upload, which was a giant piracy site. Yeah, so he's been a crook ever since the beginning. Now he just found a way to, really leverage that. And I mean, now the guy's worth, what, $6 billion or something like that? I mean, it's truly criminal.
Yeah, and I applaud. I mean, again, it's like each individual artist has the right to go and say where their music would be distributed, and then if they, if they choose to, the Neil Youngs and who are the other ones that have so far joined in? There, Nils.
Quite a few. Joni Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell, yes.
Yeah. The band Failure just did.
Oh, really? I know that it started. Yeah. The snowball started to roll, and I think they tried to, hey Joe, could you go on and say something, and then that's that's the way he does. I mean, he goes out. I mean, I would have definitely just been in the studio and just sat in front of the same. I'm not sure why he was decided to go outside and stand there with his phone in his hand, sort of like like he's recording some, some.
He's taking a selfie.
I found his apology to be probably the best that he could do, and he did state some. Made some good points about how he has brought on other people and so, but again, I honestly don't really use Spotify much myself. I mean, every once in a while I'll go on if I'm in the studio, if there's an artist that I'm interested in. That's like the sort of the easiest spot to go to find to listen to somebody or listen to something quickly and get a reference, make a point. But yeah, I do find it discouraging when you, like your point that here they are, they're ready and willing to spend outlandish amounts of money to get these people that that don't make music and create content for them, but they won't sequester enough funds aside to pay the people that are supplying 99% of the content on their site. So, yeah. But yeah, it's very frustrating, and who knows what, maybe if more follow and there'll be some variation of some sort of streaming service that will eventually pay, but it's dark times for those like ourselves that make a living off of making music.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, because I think the argument that I've seen a bunch of times, which I find Failure wrote about it, because they wrote a big Facebook post about why they were leaving Spotify. And I mean, most bands or most artists in general can't leave because, the DSPs are controlled by your record label or your distributor. So even like, for instance, like I theoretically could leave Spotify for about half of my catalog, but if I do, I'm going to be punishing the rest of basically all the fan base that uses Spotify, which is, for the most part, the lion's share. And it's not like I care about the money, because I looked at the numbers, just like for the last month, I had 301,000 streams, and the net revenue from that, which I don't get to keep anyway because I went to the distributor, but it was only $640. So so I did the math on that, and the royalty rate is 0.2 of a penny, not even 3. So I switched over personally to Tidal yesterday, and because their royalty rate is 1.2 pennies per play, which is 6 times what I saw when I crunched the numbers. So, I mean, I'm not going to ever, I won't pull my music off Spotify because there are too many people on there who, they really like Spotify. But I will encourage them to use other services. And I think that's I think that's the most responsible thing to do without, really punishing a fan base just for wanting to listen to you. And I don't think that's fair to do with them.
Yeah. Now, is Tidal part of Apple?
No, Tidal is Jay-Z's venture.
Oh, it's Jay-Z's venture. Yes, that's right. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So their whole thing was like really high quality audio at first.
And then they have do you have your catalog on Tidal?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Supposedly the Atmos mixes are on Tidal too.
Oh.
But I don't know how to do it yet. I only got the app yesterday, so I mean, I'm a total noob.
Yeah, but I definitely have to check it out.
It noticeably sounds better.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Shockingly, it was. I pulled up the same track on both like the Spotify app and the Tidal app, and it was and just here in the studio. And I mean, it's the difference between listening to a CD versus an MP3.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna create a Tidal account. Figure that out. Move forward.
Yeah, there's my sales pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll get it for free now.
Yeah. I doubt it. But yeah, I'm one that looks at this whole battle with basically sitting back with some popcorn and watching the mayhem and seeing how it all plays out. But I applaud the Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and the rest of them for taking a stand, and at the same time we'll see what happens with Joe Rogan's again. I think I read somewhere within like 24 hours he went right back to posting or commenting on something that went against the science, but that's what's it's hard to get him to do a different model when with the one he's been doing for so long is kind of works.
It's wildly successful.
Wildly successful, yes. But yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I found that I found his apology out there in the Sun of Austin. It didn't look particularly like super healthy either. I mean, I'm not. Maybe a full-on elk diet isn't always isn't the best isn't best for the complexion. But who am I to say? So anyway,
yep.
I'm one that kind of just from the sidelines, as an appreciation for the battle and the way it shapes out and plays out. But yeah, so thank you for inviting me, by the way, to come on.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate it. Excited about our the track, the remix I did that's out.
Yes. Yeah.
Ordinary Love is out there. Had a great deal of fun with that. The many when was that? That was about a year or so ago, wasn't it?
Just about.
I mean, you sent me the stems 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, because the track, the original version was done. I want to say September of 2019, and because that's when Denise was here for a week, and then because originally the whole album was supposed to come out now about 2 years ago. And then, 2 years ago happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything got pushed. And then, I think you got the stems 2 years ago-ish. But it didn't matter. There was no rush, So but when you approach a remix, what's your general ethos or thought process?
To listen to the stems, to take each part and the way that they originally laid out into consideration. I've been one that over the years appreciate still hearing the song in a remix, still hearing the original in a way. Not you obviously when someone asks us to do a remix or me to do a remix, it's like they want my input and my style and sure. to be sort of mixed into it, but at the same time, I'd like for when I'm getting remixes commissioned, I like to hear the vocal as it was laid out, not like a you know, like
Right. You don't want it all chopped up. You want to pay respect to the vocal.
to respect the vocal and you know, if there's some elements of the original, you know, stems, that's great. But so, you know, I was initially, you know, challenged a bit because the tempo is about 149 or 51.
150. I think it's 158.
158.
And it's very syncopated.
Yes. And so I you know, and I started out with, you know, with that tempo and had some ideas, but I wasn't really, I don't know, it's just something I just started to play around with different things, and then I once I heard this 128 like play with the vocals and some of the other pieces. I started to go down that path, and you know, I think I sent you something early on, like, you know, does this offend you that I'm doing it in this way? Because it actually laid out pretty well. I only had to move, slightly adjust a few things here and there.
Did you time stretch the vocals at all? It didn't.
I didn't.
Felt like,
I only adjusted, like you know, maybe shifted where things landed slightly over. But and Denise's vocals wasn't one that you wanted to time stretch, because she already had this real, you know, sort of elegant, gorgeous style, and it felt it was emotive, and it had its own you know, its own, it was its own thing, and to go in and again rip it apart or time stretch it or do something to fit it into something else didn't seem to make sense. But when I realized that strangely it you know, again, at that triplet, or you know, that thing that happens where things kind of tempos get confused a bit.
Yeah, like metric modulation.
Yeah, metric modulation thing.
I'm a nerd, man. I know.
No, I know. I gotta write that down. I'm just gonna say this. I'm just gonna throw that in any. You know, when it comes to metric modulation, I love the. It's a great name of a band too. But yeah. So following that concept, it started to come together, and I overthought it. I went back and forth. I'm always one that gets, like, initially a lot of traction on something, and then maybe I overthink a certain part, or I sometimes I'll go down, you know, a path that, you know, that will not pan out, and so, but I had a great deal of fun with it, and I loved the arc of it. You know, when, you know, at the end, when there's that, you know, introduce the strings and the different, you know, the melody and over the top of it, and the chord progression, and just using, you know, again, some of the different stems in a way that, you know, again, fit with the vocal, I put it in a mix that I just did, and I played it out a couple times on the road, it goes over really well. It's a great change of pace for a set. It's moody and it has a different style, and it's a little bit more patient, and you know, I don't want it.
Yep. That's the hook. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's,
so thank you for letting me. And again, and the remix you did of "There's a Difference" for the trip home is still one of my favorites. It's one that it fits really well into my set. A good change of pace for me in my sets. And it's a great track. I got so many great tracks to mix in and out of it. So it works really well. So awesome. You know, it's a great exchange. And of course, you were kind enough to work with me on the trip home on Cabin Pressure, and
yeah. Well, actually, because of that, I mean, everybody, like, my favorite band ever is Tool.
Yes.
So, which you're all too aware of.
Did you see them when they came through?
Yeah. The last time around, right at Staples Center.
Oh no, the one they were they were in Anaheim a couple of weeks ago.
Oh no.
And they were in Vegas. They were also in.
I saw there, and I was in Vegas 3 weeks ago or something too. But no, I mean it's.
You saw the tour. I mean, it's an extension of the. It's an extension of the Fear Inoculum tour.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So
after it was, COVID canceled and
Yeah.
everything like that. But no, first of all, I mean it's.
Oh, by the way, let me just say this. So I saw them in Vegas, this a couple weeks ago, and after the Blonde Redhead was the opening act, and after Blonde Redhead was done, Justin played. He's the one that does all the in between music and the opening music,
Right, the interludes,
so the interludes and stuff. So so Cabin Pressure came in on
No
right
shit.
after. Right, he played
Wow.
in the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas right after they were Blonde Redhead was done. So it was, obviously not full volume, but still sounded very sexy, and it was really impressive to my friends that were there with me. They're like looking over at me like, hey, Justin, I know Justin controls the interlude music, and yeah,
We were house music for Tool.
yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, really.
But yeah, I really, you pulled a fast one on me when you got Justin to play on that song, because I remember listening, because I just had it like on my phone. I didn't have a speaker when I got the email, and I mean he's like, the tone of his bass is iconic,
Absolutely.
and just like his style of playing. So I remember hearing the demo of Cabin Pressure, then suddenly like him. And it's like, oh, I that's the sound of Schism right there, being on top of these chords that I forget what synth we used, that like the OB6. I think.
It's the Prophet 6, I think, or maybe OB6.
I think it was the OB6.
Yeah.
When you had it right there on like to the left of you over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that was surreal. So I mean, I all the thanks and respect to you for.
Well, you did a fantastic job of sometimes when you just got to come by here and go through. There are many times where I'll send him something, and then he'll send me something back in a session, and there's a lot some of it's a lot to go through and to piece together. And you did a great job of finding the magic in there and working it into the track He's always up for it. He's always, like I got so many different sessions where he's just jammed stuff out and it's like it'd be a great deal of fun to go through those with you and because another fan and then someone as talented as you that works with guitars and bass a lot. You understand how to edit them and how to really make them sound great and everything. I'm such a hack when it comes to the engineer side. Ken was always he wore the engineer hat in here, and so I'm always trying to find my way through and. He's up, he's ready and willing. So we
well, that's let's make
use
that
as a starting a kickoff point here. Just find different ways to work that in because it works. It fits really well. It fucking sounds amazing in Cabin Pressure.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah. And now there's accountability because it's public. So thanks for that. Well, it's true. I mean, you've always worked with a lot of rock bands, though, in general. Which is, it's less common for electronic acts in general. It's, it's a little bit more murky now, but I mean, even on Vegas, you had Richard Patrick, Filter. And then there was like that whole remix album that was pretty much all rock bands. I mean, it's something that's always been a part of your sound.
And it's always been a part of my DNA. I mean, growing up in Vegas, and my parents were my dad was full on prog rock, and he loved the Pink Floyds and the Outlaws and these kind of bands that of course Led Zeppelin. And my first the first cassette that I remember confiscating from their collection was like Aerosmith's Greatest Hits because I just loved I love how they, and Walk This Way, they, and different ways that they use drums and they, and chord progressions, and I love the way that Dream On and the
That's the classic for me is Dream On.
Yeah, just beautiful freaking track. I mean, the fact that when they talk about it, yeah, they wrote that in an afternoon or something. The magic was there, and things just come together. And so yeah, rock has always been, part of my daily, consumption of music, and I loved heavy metal. I loved going to concerts, and when I started getting into electronic music like Cabaret Voltaire or Depeche Mode, New Order, Nights Are Ebb, and all those bands, they all had a little bit of guitar in it. So they always figured, there's this whole different tone that especially when, offset against the synthetic side of it, it just was this really great match to me. And when we started working on music, it was always about, how do we get that tone? It wasn't, didn't matter where it came from. It was a synth, it was a stringed instrument. It was about the tone, those harmonics, like finding, ways of dirtying something up and getting it to because again, you really kind of need that when you're working with music that doesn't have singing.
Right, or it doesn't have a speaker.
Yeah, absolutely. So old guitar pedals, big muffs. I mean, again, as you could look around here, I don't get rid of anything. So it's all still here, and it's just, we had a great deal of fun. Again, and then also the rock, bringing in the funk and, the rock element inspired by, the same things that a lot of hip hop was inspired by, those break beats and focusing on, you didn't have a lot of, of space in a track. You got to make sure there was enough room for the drums, a little bit of melody here, some strings, some, harmonics, and some, tone from some, some instruments. And so, it's always been a part of our sound. So working with, like the collaboration that came, after the album was done with Filter and Richard Patrick, was something that, immediately, like initially we were that was for the Spawn soundtrack. And so initially they wanted, all the songs that were on that were songs that were the two artists got together, and Kirk Hammett with Orbital or I can't remember, there was a bunch of other ones on there, but we already were, the album was done. We sent, because we had shared the same manager, Richard Bishop, and so Richard Patrick heard a Trip Like I Do and immediately was inspired, and then that that became this alternative version of Trip Like I Do, which I think actually may have dropped us a little bit before. But anyways, yeah, we were always one that to reach out and to seek out those collaborations, and then moving on into Tweekend with Tom Morello and Scott Weiland. And moving forward, John Garcia from Caius, Wes Borland, on Legion of Boom, and also elements of hip hop with Rozelle and just
it's a hit list, man.
Always
crazy.
Inspired. always
like
always one that just. We like working with people that did something different from us.
Yeah, it makes sense.
What to bring, not to, working with, we didn't really do a lot of working with other electronic artists. So that wasn't something that
I've always felt, what's the point?
Yeah. So we were really lucky to be able to, be in a situation where, we could bring those people in and be inspired by those individuals and create something new out of it. And for us, it was like, from Vegas, after Vegas, we were like, if I hear another 909 drum roll, I'm going to, bash my head in. We wanted to do something completely different. There's no way we could have gone back in and done a follow-up to Vegas that sounded like Vegas or was in that same style, because it was...
You're past that. That's not who you are anymore.
We burned through all that, and so when we were making Tweekend, it was like I was digging through, old bins of funk music and listening to a lot of, rock and sort of those earlier, versions of Tool and some of that stuff that was coming out, around the same time as we were out there. And we were also playing festivals with a lot of bands. And so, we would just, it was something that's a natural progression for us. So, and then moving on after that, we just continue to try different things, try to sound a little bit different. The goal was to somebody hear something and go, oh, that's the Crystal Method, but it's still sounded different from the previous stuff. So, moving forward, that was always the goal. And then, working on the Divided by Night, Justin Warfield and Modest Yahoo. That was a lot of fun. Rock has always been a part of the DNA of the Crystal Method.
Yeah. How do you find your workflow now compared to in the Vegas days? Aside from probably all the beats were coming out of samplers, probably for the most part.
Yeah. I still have all those breakbeat sample DJ scratch records that had went in and isolated a lot of those break beats, and then the digital dumpster diving on download sites where you'd find different samples that somebody would cut up and. And then of course we had certain, we had some drum machines and different things that we would use and sample, and it was really just, again, it was, the workflow was like, wow, this is a cool beat, or this, I love the snare in this track, or this, or I just plugged the D, whatever we had back in the 606, into this, into this distortion pedal, and wow, that when you crush that snare, it just really fucking sounds huge. So it would be this, piecing together kind of mad scientist sort of style, and for the workflow. The workflow now is a little bit convoluted because my attention is just taken by all these different elements, and coming into the studio, it's kind of weird. I'm happy that the new album, The Trip Out, is going to be coming out in April, and it's always great to finish an album and put a bow on it and get it mastered and be like, I approve this mastering, and I approve it, and get it done. And
I'm clean slate. I'm done.
Clean slate. So, so although it's not sometimes a arduous sort of task to sort of start thinking about a new album and a new project, it's also kind of refreshing to have a fresh start and go. I think what I'm going to do this next time around is I'm just going to spend, and I'm taking a page out of your book, just spend sound designing. Just spend a long time just sound designing with certain instruments and certain and sort of keep things where everything is related to, maybe use a sample library that's been sort of chosen and manipulated in a way where, that one song's will relate to another song like a way that a drummer would when they're going into a work in a session with a producer. Right. That producer has an engineer has a certain way of hooking things up, and and so I think that would be a great way to. Oops. It's not on that motion detectors, but yeah, I think that's and I try to do that, but then I just get I get distracted a little bit, and sometimes I get in a hurry. So I think that one of the things that I'm gonna get into is just curating some sample libraries, if you will, of sounds and stuff to choose from, and then bring those things in, and then not feel like I'm going to go through 1,000 kicks and 1,000 different snares to find the one that fits. fit the track around that, sort of in the same way that a producer does, an engineer does when they bring in a band.
That just made me. That reminded me. I got to show you my little new toy recently. Here we go. So you know what these are, yeah?
You're glitching out a bit there, but it looks like it looks like a giant tomato.
No, it's a tongue drum, but so it's tuned to C major, but
Oh yeah. Okay.
But it sounds actually actually they're mallets that you're supposed to use with it. I was using the my fingers, but it's quite nice.
Yeah, it's really
yeah. So that is, I mean, I've only got it a week ago. It was like $60 total on Amazon, which is awesome.
Being at your place, I have a great appreciation for all the little toys that you have laying around there.
Because it's like, all right, it's your method of the crystal method, if you will, of recording something weird, but then jamming it through a guitar pedal.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's something I really appreciate about your workflow, because that's basically the same thing I do over here with my little army of guitar pedals. Because
I love the way your guitar pedals are much more organized.
Well, yeah, but the problem with that is they're all in like the same. They're in a set order.
Yeah.
Which it's like it's easier in the sense I can have them all there at the same time, but it's also it's limiting. And then if there's like an issue in the chain, I'm like scratching my head of like, oh no, where, like, because there are like 40 pedals there or something like that.
Yeah.
So then I'm trying to figure like, oh God, which connector is fried or what? I mean, it becomes a total headache. So half the time I just kind of like pull like a one-off, and so they're kind of just everywhere at this point. But they're inspirational, which is why I love them. And like you were saying with, like, it's so much more exciting when you take that snare out of, say, a 606 or a 707 and you jam it through a big muff. And that's a cool, I mean, you can't do that in the box at all.
No.
Nothing sounds like that. And I think, with the advent of computer or just like digital production and DAWs, as amazing as they are and everything like that, and especially with things like Ableton Live, for instance, which, really encourage people to work completely in the box, where, it's like dress up Barbie in a way where it, automatically makes everything fit. Reese Fulber, actually, he used to, of Delirium and Conjure One, he used to call all the loop making dress up Barbie, which is something I've never, because it's literally like, okay, this is her shirt, this, this top loop, and, this is her skirt, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I think what's been lost, especially for a lot of people who are really coming up now, is like the sheer joy of having like this tactile interaction with an instrument.
Yeah. And what I really appreciated about when you came in is you have your Euro rack of toys that you're very familiar with. It's a little off-putting when someone like myself sees something that
it's intimidating.
Very intimidating, yes. But I was very inspired by it as well. I've stuck my toe in a little bit over here, but I I haven't. I also get a slightly that's the other thing. When the album, you're in the middle of an album cycle, making an album, it's always about, the goal, moving forward, putting this piece in this spot, and, brick by brick, and sometimes, projects like that, the way my mind thinks, I sometimes can't go like, okay, well, I know we got the wall halfway up, but what if we went over here and spent 3 hours on paint design, and right. And it's like it's sometimes I'm able to do it if I come in and I don't have a thought process or some sort of continuation in my mind of where I was last time. I can come in and spend a few hours on with toys that I'm basically getting to know for the first time or understanding a little bit better. But again, that's one of those things that goes back to sort of a clean slate and starting over is spending some of that time by just experimenting with some of the stuff and
you also create the palette for the album then.
Yeah,
which is good, because then if you really kind of restrict yourself to at least mostly the palette you've created, then the whole thing's going to sound cohesive.
Yes. And that, and then sometimes, things, again, I'm not as disciplined as others when it comes to that. But I feel that if I set myself up with enough pre-production folders of specifically of drum sounds or loops or different things that are inspired from that sort of those sessions, then those would be things that I pull from as the project goes forward. Oh, I need some percussion here. Oh, remember I spent 2 days with this concept and playing around with these different things. So then again, I'm also one that still likes to go in and like I talk to some people like Steve Duda. He's like, I know exactly what I want to do from the beginning to end. Mm-hmm. And it's about writing the code and going in there and understanding how you get from, if you write this code, that will set up being able to write this code, and then that will be able to set up writing this code, and then when and that's how they work. And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. I can't work like that. I'm like, I sometimes I'll go in thinking I'm doing a chord progression, and all of a sudden, I've decided to do some weird pad drone thing I spend 3 hours, going down a rabbit hole. At the end of it, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? What is this? I mean, yeah, it's cool, but I can't use this in what but I'll set it aside for something else.
And then it becomes, but I think I agree, because I like the creative mess.
Yeah.
That to me is exciting, because even if you go in with this preconceived notion of exactly what you're going to do, then it often feels a little, just personally, to each their own, but for me, it feels flat when I've tried to do something like that. But when I fall in love with something is because, like, say I was just tweaking or, doing exactly what you're talking about, and you get obsessed and you fall into this wormhole, and then you get something really unique out of it, which isn't necessarily what you went searching for, but it's often better.
Yeah. And, for this album that's coming out, working with a few people that also think in that way, where there would be similar to what we did over here, where there'd be just some jam sessions, and then and then things that you'd mine from those jam sessions, maybe they don't fit that particular track that that's you have in mind at that moment, but if you collect a bunch of ideas and have them in a folder, then you can go, oh yeah, this chord progression I had for this other idea, maybe that will work, or maybe this effects loop thing that I had going, maybe that would fit in here, and you start piecing things together, and I would imagine it would be the same if someone who's a clothing designer has a bunch of different fabrics cut up and they're laying it over something, and they put they don't work, and they put it over there, and like, oh well, what if I put this sash or whatever over this, I imagine it's all different people have different workflows, but I'm always fascinated with people that at least convey that they have the knew exactly what the song was going to sound like from the moment they started working on it. I don't think that way, and I don't think I ever will. But I'm it's interesting to think that there are people out there that can do it that way, and in a way, I can sometimes I'll sometimes have like dreams of like I'll have a dream, or I'll wake up from the dream and I'm like, fuck, that was a great song I just wrote in this dream. I'm like, what was that? And I'll never be able to remember it, but it's like, I know that there's ideas that are swirling around in there, and that, it's really about finding the moment when you're in the studio and you can access those thoughts, those subconscious thoughts in a way that will lead the creative process, and sort of you can, follow through with some of those ideas that you didn't realize you had.
Do you find you're better at that now than you were 25 years ago?
No, I was 25 years ago when things were much simpler and there weren't as many things going on. I was able to, I could go in the studio for, 18 hours a day and just sit there and okay, all right, let's go get lunch, and then come back and it'd be like, spending, hours with, some synth that you just picked up or that someone let you borrow and
there are no adult obligations to
no adult obligations, and so that was a much more interrupted, less time being interrupted by things that phone calls from management or obligations that I'm happy to partake in when it comes to family but that's one of the reasons why I was thinking about maybe finding a studio situation that was a little closer to home, but building a studio and finding a house and building a studio in the house, because then that way there's those moments when I'm at home at the kids are in bed and I'm like thinking like got about an hour of like time where my brain's like going to be active and I can go out and go 15 feet out the backyard and go into my studio and play around with some ideas rather than like drive 20 30 minutes to the studio and get in and unlock and turn the alarm off and get in. It's so I kind of been romanticizing that, but we'll see.
It makes sense or even just have like a smaller remote setup.
Yeah, and I just would mainly about just finding a place that. But again, I don't want to. I'd like to have a separate building, or like convince the wife that I can have the garage. But that's not something that's currently.
You know what you could do? I've seen a bunch of people do this. Not so much in LA, but they get those like the pre-made homes or like a shed, like a bit, not like a shed you get at Home Depot, but a nicer shed, and they have like there's well. I've heard of a company out of Italy. They're really expensive. Where you basically they come over and they build a room with everything, isolated power, all the different things. It's like $85,000 to $100,000 or something like that. But they're building a professional environment for one to have a studio that can fit into a backyard or inside a garage or whatever, where you're not going through all the headache of figuring out like all the different things that are code. This is just like they build the entire space. Yep.
And then if
they just drop it down there.
And then if they come over and they build it all out, and then if you decide to sell it, they'll buy it back from you. Which is a crazy. I don't know that I've heard of it's an Italian company, and I don't know what happened when it came to the COVID and how the different embargoes and different restrictions came into play with the way that they were their business model. But yeah, I have a great studio, and I got to stop bitching about things and just get work done.
You just gotta turn off the automatic clapping lights.
Yeah. It's their motion. Their motion. I know I'm saving some. Of course, I've got blinking lights rolling around me.
Right, of course. I don't think you're really saving that much on your electric bill by that.
I try to turn things off as much as I do a pretty good job of I can pretty much turn everything off in here. But at the same time, when you come in, like I said, sometimes it's you got to go through the task of booting everything back up and starting things up. And some of these old synths, they prefer to be on for a little while until they warm up. Yeah. They need to warm up a bit. Yeah.
Something I want to touch on, because we were kind of getting there, but comparing, especially with, when you look at the Vegas days, and then now it's different. Just because like back then, you and Ken blew up, pretty early. How Crystal Method was, Vegas was what, 97?
Yeah, 97.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then, then it was just like, you were as big as it got in that world. And then now 20 years later, it's a different crop of stars, I guess, as you consider it. And how do you reconcile, and this is really a question I'm asking for myself, it's like my own therapy, but like, how do you reconcile, you're not being as in vogue as you once were?
When we had our sort of our gradual momentum each month, after Vegas came out. There's the way it started was Ken and I were working together for different artists, producing rappers and trying to find our way through this. We thought initially we were going to be, like the like a production duo, like that worked with different artists and produced different artists, and
right, but not your own artist project.
And then it wasn't until we started going out to and then we're just talking about late 80s and early 90s, and then we started going out to raves and started, going, and seeing Orbital perform, and seeing although they were set up really high, which I always found to be amusing to me why they set it up that way. But they were, it was like, here, there's two guys with synths. We're two guys with synths. They don't have a vocal. They don't have a vocalist, or if they did, they weren't, they were using samples or whatever. So, once we realized that, we could, start to experiment with making our own music for ourselves, then, we put out our first single, Now Is the Time, which is in 94, then Keep Hope Alive in 95, started doing some touring, relentlessly going out and playing every place that would hire us to play raves and parties and different things. And then 96, got the record deal, put out Vegas in 97, and then just toured relentlessly for Vegas. And, each week it just, sold, every week or just sold 8,000 copies of Vegas every week for 2 or 3 years, and eventually went gold, and then eventually went platinum. And then, then we were like, okay, well, we gotta make a follow up. And then 2001 Tweekend came out, and we were touring with that one. And then, that was when record sales started to change a bit. There was different Napsters and different things like that. Yep. And so we've seen that slide where the enthusiasm for people buying the albums, which is basically how all artists were making money. We didn't make any money touring because we spent so much on taking a crew out and production out, we also realized that as we were coming up in 97 and 98, we saw the fall of other bands that were popular 3 or 4 or 5 years before. Not a drop off the cliff, but again, it's just one of those things. There's always someone coming up. Mm-hmm. There's every year, there's another 1,000 albums that come out, or that there's another 150 groups that are just hungry and inspired by their own sound, and that are working. And so, when we got to 10 years, we were like, fuck, we've been doing this 10 years. Fucking amazing. How did we do that? How did we even survive? There were bands that came out the same time as us that didn't, for whatever reason, make it to 10 years. And whether they were, issues with the band falling out or just whatever it was, they, in fact, and then we got to 15, and then, then we were like, we got to 20, and we were always, our manager was really, aggressive in encouraging us to do different things and try different, whether it was, working with, scoring or gaming or.
I was going to ask you how you got into scoring, actually.
Taking opportunities to work with some company like Riot Games, and a lot of that stuff, a lot of it really came out of hey, this guy who was a fan when he was in college at USC, he's really good friends with this other guy that was a fan of yours, and he's now one of the guys that created Riot Games, and they love your music, and they would like you to come in and take a meeting to do something, or that same situation where, hey, I just met these guys, I just met the Crystal Method, yeah, they're really cool guys. Oh yeah, I'd love the Crystal Method, and they're easy to work with, and they don't, again, relationships are built by not damaging your reputation and your and other relationships. So if you go through life just fucking pissing on everybody, eventually, there's going to be some
pissed on.
Yeah, somebody's there's somebody's going to go, fuck, I
Right.
worked with those guys and they were fucking pains in the asses, or I saw them at some show and they just were they didn't look like they were good citizens or whatever the case may be. So we were always cognizant of the fact that working, trying different things, touring was a big part of our success, because if radio stations aren't playing your music, you got to get it in front of people. So we were relentless with our goal to make music, to promote our music, to find different ways to reach out and creatively and do different things. So as when I see someone that that has success and is in playing in big venues and there's a moment when you go, yeah, I'm happy for them, super, that's that's super cool. And there's also moments when I go, yeah, I remember when we played that at that venue, and but at the same time, there are 9 out of 10 bands that had just as much excitement and were as talented as we were when we started out, that for whatever reason isn't out there making music anymore, either by choice or by chance. But again, bitterness doesn't really help propel yourself and project a good image. So just the process and again, working with others that that are like-minded and that you get along with, and those collaborations with people like yourself make the process enjoyable and to just keep moving forward, figuring out a way to move forward and be productive and fake it till you make it.
Do you think there's what would you say the legacy of the Crystal Method is when you look back after 25 years?
I think that one of the things that Ken and I are most proud of is that we changed a lot of people's minds of perception of what techno or electronic music was. When they back when I was growing up, even when I was when I was going to high school, you have the Peachy folder and be like I'd be Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, Crew, and Rat and all these different things, and my friend over there would be like Depeche Mode and Tears for Fears, I was dismissive, well, what's that? I got my own little bubble here and I'm happy in it. And then eventually, if somebody played me something, I remember listening to Black Celebration for the first time, and I was like, what the fuck is this? This is epic. This is dark and gloomy and that had all these different elements that reminded me of some of the stuff I really liked in metal. And so then that swung the door open, and I kept going into that world. Still loved listening to air drumming to Metallica or in my living room, but found this whole other side of this thing that I initially was dismissive of. And one of the things that we've heard from the very beginning was Crystal Method was the band that turned me on to electronic music. That they I was in my bubble and I heard Vegas or I heard Tweekend, and I was like, wow, I'm gonna
bridge the gap.
I'm gonna push this door open a little farther and explore a little bit more. And so, I mean, when we did Family Values in '99, I mean, we're playing, in front of,
Oh, I remember that was like the Korn tour and all that. Right?
It was it was that, in that tour. It was like Limp Bizkit was the headliner, and and Filter was on that show, and it was Method Man was, I think, also on a few of those shows, and Stained, I think, or there's a bunch of bands that were not with not like the Crystal Method, but and there was we went up there and we were like, fuck it, we're going to do our thing, and you had the kids that were like this, the front row the whole time, and then by the end of it they were like this. So I mean, you just you persevere, you move, you have a a belief in your sound, and you're like, that was the other thing that we were always, go up there and fucking do what you're gonna do, and take no prisoners, if you will, and then you gain a little respect, and then people would have a different perspective of what the sound was. And so, there was, I think that for me, and also just those individual conversations that we've had with people over the years. One of the reasons why I really love touring and then, the end of the show, just hanging out with the crowd, because there's somebody in that crowd that has a story about how the music affected them, whether they were doing a tour of duty in Afghanistan and they were in a lockdown in a foxhole with their Walkman, and they were like, didn't know if they were going to make it through the night, and that record got them through, or the stories of people, lost my dad. He had to drive 15 hours to get to the funeral, and I listened to Vegas the whole way through, and it got me through. All these different ways that people made a connection with the music, and how that has affected them and helped get them through something or whether. I mean, so those are those moments that I find the most satisfying, as far as like what the band has been able to do, as far as like releasing music and that music going on and affecting someone in a positive way.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it still happens. So people still find a way to they find it somehow, and then they listen to it, and they, again, like on the last album, The Trip Home, and a lot of people have come up and said it's so different than a lot of the things that are out there. It's like a refreshing take on so I've always, the other thing that Ken and I always wanted to do is we never wanted to make music just for one environment. Like like if we tried to make music just for clubs, we would have been done years ago, because you can't, as exciting as that moment is on a dance floor, if you go to take it home and you're like, fuck, I didn't realize the song's 9 minutes long, and it doesn't, and there's no curves, and there's no atmosphere, there's no moments when you can sit and breathe, because they were only meant to be, pumped through a giant, sound system and into people that are inebriated or, high on their own energy. And so we found it was always finding a way not to make music only for one environment. People have to be able to listen to it in their cars and their headphones at home and still get something out of it. So and again, that's, and then there's a lot of luck. Obviously, a lot of luck involved in, but like I said, if you or decent, and you don't fuck people over, and don't spend time scorching the earth. Eventually, some shit grows out of that, where that could be part of the future, or make some sort of bridge to working on another project, and that continues to move forward. I mean, the things that have happened over the last 25 years that relate to being kind and not being a douchebag, and that those continue to prove out to be the reason why we're I'm still making music today.
You nailed it, man. It's such a pleasure knowing you, and such an honor to, of course, work with you and have your hand on, of course, the remix with Denise and Ordinary Love. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, Matt. Always great to see you. Next time we'll go down to the pub and have a few,
Yes,
and come over to the studio. And although I am allergic to cats, I haven't had any breakouts when I was over.
You were pretty good the last time you were here. Yep.
Yeah. I think if I maybe your cats are just different. Maybe they're different. But dude, let's make some music.
Let's make some music.
Yeah, I really and I tell you, I'm always super impressed with the way that you think about music, the way you practice music, the way you spend time with your instruments, and the love you have for instruments that are not involved in electronic music, and how you use those to create different, atmospheres and different sounds and different elements and music that is super like techie and driven, and those atmospheric things you did with Dolby. Like I said, when I did that show with
that's right,
that Dolby Atmos thing, playing your tracks and I know that they keep looking for content. So one of the things I want to do is get in and do an Atmos version of Trip Home. And
you absolutely, and you can do it on headphones now anyway.
Yeah.
It's worth doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to get Tidal so I can listen to it, right?
Or Apple.
Or Apple. Yes.
Yep. But yeah, it's super fun. It's so worth it.
All right. So Tidal subscription, got to work on that, and then we're going to get together for a beer and make some music.
We're going to get beer.
Yeah, and we're going to get beer.
Good
awesome.
plan.
All right, Matt. Good to talk to you.
You too, Scott.
We'll hang out soon.
Sounds good. That was me talking to Scott Kirkland of The Crystal Method. Go check out his remix of my song with Denise Reno, Ordinary Love, and keep your eyes peeled for the new album, The Trip Out.